Hi, guys. Welcome back to our podcast. I'm Elise.
And I'm Dom.
This week we have an incredible guest. She has spent over a decade climbing the ranks at one of the world's top 5 software companies, earning 7 promotions and a raise pretty much every year. A female powerhouse in a male dominated industry, she's breaking barriers and redefining success. On top of that, she's the founder of Milkshake, an all female F1 media brand, bringing a fresh and fun take on motorsport, covering the news, drama, fashion, and everything in between. Welcome, Natasha.
Thanks for having me.
Did you like your little intro?
I did. That was so cute.
I know Elise always puts like so much hard work when we did it for Catherine and Vic. They're like, okay, can you like record that and like send it to me so I can play that?
Pumping me up.
Well, we just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. It means a lot. We love having people on the podcast that kind of resonate with our community and just like being a female founder and being in that space. We start off every podcast episode with a peek and pit. So basically something that went really well last week and then something that you're struggling with, can be super serious, from like a health issue, something, or like as silly as like I lost my favorite lip liner and that is my pit. So do you want to start off?
Sure.
Okay.
So I love tennis. So my peak is I have been struggling with my serve recently, and I went to the best tennis lesson where I got 3 tips, and now I think I'm going to win every match that I have. So that was like the highlight of my week. And then
Is that a new hobby that you picked up?
no, I played tennis
Okay, your whole life.
my whole life.
Okay.
I did take a 15-year hiatus, so I did start getting back into it for the
Okay,
last
but
year.
muscle memory.
Exactly. And then my pit is, we've been trying to start a family, and unfortunately this month didn't happen again, so we gotta keep going. So
When the timing's
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
it'll happen. Okay, Elise, your peak and pit.
I feel like we have a similar peak. We are looking to onboard a new like social media coordinator, social media assistant. I feel like social media, because I've run so many pages for so many brands, running the page for your own brand, which I'm sure you're familiar with, can either be like really good for a period of time, and I've been doing it for like a year, and then you kind of come to a point where you just need like a fresh brain and fresh ideas. So we are always getting DMs of girls being like, are you hiring interns or are you hiring? And we always laugh at them, but because we're like, what? But
you want to work with us?
but then we actually like sat and thought about it and we were like, okay, maybe this is a good idea. So I feel like that's like a universal peak.
Yeah.
And then pit. What's your pit?
I would say pit. I think we've both, like I'm going to speak for the both of us. I think we've come to the realization of how much work goes into having like a startup, small business, taking something from the ground up. Like we're lucky enough, the House of Movement kind of the past year kind of just, we coasted by, like, I don't want to sound arrogant, but like success kind of just, like it was just doing really well. But now we're at the point where we're like, okay, we need to really like be strategic with what we're doing and where we're inserting ourselves in the market. And it's a lot of work to like be intentional with like your posting, and like our social media has been a little bit stagnant, and like we're like, okay, we need to get the ball rolling. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a pit, but it's like okay,
It's a wake-up call.
yeah, it's a wake-up call of like, okay, we need to start taking this, not that we haven't been taking it seriously, but to, I don't know, just kind of go in a different direction, because I feel like we're kind of just like plateauing right now. We're like, okay, everything's going, events are selling, we have a really fun event this weekend for Women's Day, but like our social media is like it's not existent, and we need someone. So yeah, I love doing a peek and pit, because it's
But it's also nice that you guys have like figured out what's working, that then you
Yeah.
can like, like have the instincts to be like, okay, we can do this
Yeah.
next. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's something that's important just for any brand that you start, is being able to look at it and say, okay, this isn't working right now. What can we do that is working? And maybe that does mean bringing somebody new on with new ideas. So I'm excited for that.
So am I.
Anyway, getting into you, how did you start in the corporate world? Because you are with a very well-known company, and especially as like a female, I feel like growing the corporate ladder is not overly easy. So how did you
Yeah.
get started?
I honestly didn't overthink it. I now husband, actually, we went through a breakup and he moved back to Toronto. We were living in Calgary. And long story short, Tinder had just come out. I went on a Tinder date and I was like, what am I doing here? I'm originally from Singapore. And this person asked me if Singapore was a small town in Ontario. And I was like, no, it's not. And then I literally went home. I Googled top tech companies Toronto and I applied to all 5 of them. And one of them called me on the Monday. And that was it. So I didn't like overthink it. I just applied and then someone called and I went on the interview and that was that.
Do you have a tech background? Like,
No,
was that
no,
okay?
No, definitely not.
So I guess then my question is, like, we have so many people that are like wanting to bounce between industries, or like for myself, or like we'll use Elise as an example. Her undergrad is in science, now does like social media strategy, all of that stuff. Like, how were you so quickly able to like insert yourself into tech with maybe not having the experience or the network or the connections? Like, what made it so easy?
Well, so I lead a sales team.
Okay.
And I was in another sales role at another company in an entry level role, and I applied to a similar role, and that's kind of like how it happened. But yeah, it was like pretty organic. But I would say just like I guess sales is a career that you can have any background. Like there's no
100%.
sales degree when you go to school.
It's more of, I think, your soft skills. Like one of my
communication.
Yeah, one of my close girlfriends, she does sales for one of Cisco, like the big food manufacturers, and she just got moved into outbound sales. But the complete reason why she got hired is her and I serve and we bartend, and she just got poached. They were like, you have great people skills, and like you're so amicable and you're so charismatic, and like was so easily transitioned into a sales role. Like went to school for like psychology and law, and yeah, like that whole realm.
Yeah, I also served. And
Okay.
I have like a marketing degree.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think it's like communication and how you present yourself. Because selling is just like communicating an idea and like listening and talking and then connecting the two.
So when you started in this company, was it already one of the major companies, or did it sort of grow to become that?
It was already like when I first started, it was about 15,000 employees and now it's 80,000. So it's massive. So it has grown a ton, but it wasn't a small company. I thought it was huge when I first started.
I mean, yeah, 15,000 is a lot, but I guess like compared to 80,000, it seems pretty small. So if you were running a sales team, men versus women on that team, what would you say the ratio would be?
It's hard. So I would say when I first started, it was probably like 1 in 5. One
being female and then
5. And then like now, like we work really hard to like help make it more equitable and equal, but it's still tough. Like I would still say it's at least like maybe 2/3.
Have you seen like a transition over time of companies trying to be more inclusive with like females after all of the female rights movements and I don't know, what was that movement that went around on social media with, I think it was Harvey Weinstein.
Yes.
Oh yeah, Me Too.
Yeah, the Me Too movement.
I think it depends on the industry, but in tech it's like definitely more progressive. So there's been a huge like push for there to be more equality in the workplace. But it's like the problem is we just don't get enough women who apply. That's really the issue. Like let's say for every 10 people that apply, it's like 8 guys, 2 girls. And so there's just not enough and you still need to pick the best person for the job. So I think like there needs to be more work done in like what you guys are doing, right? Like talking about different roles, getting people to understand what's out there.
Yeah.
So that people become interested in roles that are typically not like women may not, kind of go towards.
So to the girl who's listening to this podcast wanting to get into tech and like maybe transitioning from something else and maybe trying to be, I don't know, fill the role, what would you say are like the biggest things that you wish someone was guiding you with when you transitioned into the role that you are now? Or like if you could be a mentor to someone now, like what are some of the biggest things? Because being in corporate as a female can be extremely intimidating, and especially for a company with 15,000 people, which you were at the time. Like I work in corporate now, but it's for a startup. My team is 15 people. So like that's the difference is insane. And like what would you say is your biggest takeaway? Or if you have multiple.
Yeah, I think it's important to do your research on the company, like what kind of company it is, how do they treat their employees, do you see a lot of like upward mobility, or and also I always look at the leadership team, like how like is the leadership team balanced in terms of like men and women? I think that's a big part of it. And then, if you're changing careers or industries, you just kind of have to try. There's like no like substitute for just putting yourself out there trying. If you don't like it, they can go do something else.
How obviously I'd be like advocating for yourself as like a young woman is always hard no matter what industry you're in, especially a position where you maybe are just a number in a
Mhm.
company of 80,000 people. So, A, how would you like give advice to a girl on how to better advocate for yourself? And then B, to stand out so you actually make a bit of an impression and are not
Yeah.
just like one out of 80,000 people.
Yeah, there's a term that we call this at my company called like building your brand, like your internal brand, and like, what would people say about you when you're not in the room? Um, and so like I think it's like letting your work speak for itself, and like I think you stand out when people come to you for help. And like people will only come to you for help if you're doing something different, right? If you are bringing new ideas, you're like innovating in your role, you're taking like initiative and side projects and like taking the lead. Um, so I think that's the best way to stand out is like make your work speak for itself. And I think equally as important though is having like really amazing mentors like in your network at work that can advocate for you in addition to like, the day-to-day stuff that you're delivering on.
Actually, we were talking about that last night about mentors, and it was Nick who was like, do you guys have mentors and who are they? And it was funny because both of us said like we had never thought about it before to think of like, oh, I guess we should probably have like somebody that we look up to or
Yeah.
are able to talk to like in our career field and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's hard to find a mentor that not only is in the space that you're trying to grow in, but also fits like other categories that you want to look up to in your life. So I think you can have mentors for different things.
Where, like, when did your mentor fit into your place? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
when I think of mentor, like, yes, like mom and dad, but I think of like my dad is very business driven. He's very educated, like helps me a lot with just work and everything. So I would look at him as like a mentor when it comes to things that I need to get done for work. But was your mentor someone like right in your team? Was it someone that you met through like a networking event and it kind of
Yeah.
just worked out? Because I think that's something that a lot of girls want, especially like being in corporate and being entry level, like to have someone advocate for you and like
Mm.
to have your best intentions. Because I think as a female you can kind of get overlooked and
Yeah.
taken advantage of and your boundaries don't get respected. So to have someone that is like, no, like she's good. Like I vouch for her. And like, how did you find that?
Yeah, I do think that this is like an easier thing to do in a corporate environment because there's oftentimes like
And people
programs.
want to be mentors.
Yeah.
Like I think, yeah.
So a lot of companies have like mentor programs. The way I found mine was there's like a women's network, at a lot of companies, and I met this lady spoke on a panel. And she was like in the role I wanted to, especially at the time, like, she was like 5 roles ahead of me. And so I just emailed her. I said, "Hey, I loved, your perspective and
I'm a huge fan.
yeah, no, I love your perspective, like what you've
Yeah.
accomplished, like how you presented yourself." And I essentially said, I want to be in your role. And so I would love to learn like what's made you successful that I can take your approach and do it in my current job. And that, like what I did there actually helped me get those promotions because she taught me, you know, different things I could apply. And then when I went and interviewed, I was already doing the things they wanted me to do in the next role. So then it just like was super practical.
Yeah, it was like an easy segue
And
for
then
sure.
also when I would go to meetings and have like a presentation I needed to do in a certain way I wanted to position something, I would could run it by her first. And because she had more experience, she could be like, you can anticipate this objection and that objection, and you can come prepared so that, you can like execute it at each meeting the way you wanted to.
Yeah, that's something that my dad has actually taught me. Like when I have my one-on-ones with my boss, like
Yeah.
he's told me, he's like, this is exactly how you're gonna run your one-on-one and like take complete control. That way, like you're not sitting there on your one-on-one and your boss is like you just like say everything and like you run the show. And I have started to do that. And so like I have my one-on-ones every Thursday and my boss is like, okay, like take the stage, like it's yours. And then we run by and he's like, I have nothing to say, like you've covered everything. And to have someone that can guide you, because like if you go into an entry-level role and you don't know how to do that, like who's gonna teach you?
I know.
Like you're kind of just like fighting for like your life and just like
I know. Yeah,
and
I
it's
think that
tough.
being prepared is like such a easy way to stand out. Because like what you just talked about, like, your boss doesn't have to think about, oh, Dom prepared, right? She's got ABCD things she wants to cover and she knows what she wants. And then their biggest reward is seeing you like learn or hear what they're telling you, apply it, and then come back and say, hey, this worked and that didn't work, and it's like super productive. I think she helped me with foresight. So when I would, in a sales role, you're obviously delivering content and going to meetings and meeting new clients. And she helped me and prepare for those meetings. So if I was going to a meeting with an executive, like small things, for example, she would say, make sure you never come empty handed. Make sure you bring like small gifts with you and think about how to make the meeting like interactive and have like polls and quizzes and like the soft things that people remember you because you're one of many different organizations trying to sell to that company. So yeah, I think for her, she just taught me how to plan ahead and think about not just like the job that I had, but how to make it like more personable. Yeah.
So something that Elise and I talk about all the time is like faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
And when I started, like I'll use myself as an example. I am in like a startup, B2B marketing, corporate tech, like a little bit intimidating. And like I don't have like a full marketing degree. So when I got the role, a lot of it was like I really just had to be like self-sufficient and like teach myself and watch videos and take like extra courses on the side because I said I was like, yeah, I know how to do this. Like I do
Yeah.
not. I spent literally the past like 3 months I taught myself Webflow, Figma, and like I did a full copyright course. But leading up to my interview, I was like, no, I have these skills like down packed. What Was there a moment in your career where you felt like really bad imposter syndrome or you felt like you didn't deserve to be in that position? And like, what would you say is the best way to overcome it?
So I feel like that every day still, even throughout my whole career. So, and I don't think I think that the mistake is thinking it's going to go away because if it goes away, that means like you're plateauing. Like I think that being uncomfortable is part of the journey. But yeah, an example I can give is, when I first started out going to meetings, presenting for the first time, like why would someone take me seriously, right? I don't know anything about tech. Like, why would they trust me? And I went to this meeting and I was sitting in the parking lot after with one of my colleagues, and he was older than me and the guy, his name was Brent. And the only reason I remember the situation is when he quit, he messaged me and said, Natasha, I just want to let you know you made such an impact on me 8 years ago when we first started working together. Do you remember the situation? And he was like, do you remember the parking lot that we were in? I tried to give you feedback after a meeting we had. And I was like, no, Brent, I've been to 2,000 meetings. I don't remember. And he was like, I tried to tell you, like, hey, you did a great job. You delivered everything that we wanted to say, but, you should try and like be more yourself and like loosen up a little bit. And it could, because the way that you did it just made it feel a little robotic. Like it was still great,
Like
but
too corporate.
yes.
Like, yeah.
And I was like 24 at the time. And I said to him, Brent, I can't do that because I'm Asian and I'm female and they're going to think I'm 14 years old. And
Okay.
he
But
like,
that's like a valid,
yeah,
that's like such a valid way to think, like where you feel like you need to present yourself of something else
totally.
so people don't take you for face value. But I think when people take you for face value and they see this like organic, authentic side of you, how you deliver, like it stands out.
I know, yeah. And he just said, I never thought about it that way as a guy, and it just like changed my perspective. And like, she's not the only one that feels like this. And he became a leader, and he said, that always stuck with me about how to lead my teams better. But then fast forward, I went to a meeting, I don't know, 2 months ago, and it was with probably like 20 leaders in the financial services industry, and there were like 20 people, and there was 3 women, so 17 guys and 3 ladies. And I was sitting beside the CMO at this wealth company, one of the largest wealth firms in Ontario. And she like hits me and she goes, don't you feel lonely at this thing? And she was like in her, like, she was probably going to retire soon age.
Yeah, because the CMO, you're a
Y-
chief marketing
Yeah.
officer.
So she was probably like close to 60, and I just laughed. And now I'm at the point where like I don't care anymore, right? And that authentic me now, I don't think could have just happened 10 years ago. Like you just kind of have to go through the journey. And then she pointed out, she's like, "Hey, I like your nails." And I told her, there was a point in time when I would be too scared to get nails like this because I didn't think people would take me seriously. And then she's like, "Well, back in my day, did you know that women weren't allowed to wear pantsuits?" And we just started having this hilarious side conversation in a room just with like older men about like our own experiences, but in different times. So yeah, it happens.
I mean, I feel like that shows how far we've come. Even for myself, I almost work in the opposite. I work in a very female-dominated
Right.
space where my only interactions all day, every day are with females, and not just females, young females. And the odd time that we'll have a call with a man, which I did like 2 days ago, sometimes I don't know how to approach it because I'm like, do you understand what we do? And if you do understand what we do you like genuinely get why we're doing it? Because I feel like, yes, we run women's social events around Toronto and we do it to connect like minded women and all of these things.
Yeah, and just have to remember that they're just people at the end of the day. Like that person probably has a niece or a daughter or a son or whatever, and I'm sure they're hearing from them how hard it is to meet people nowadays and like maybe speak about it like that way.
I so because I work for a small team, like I used to get so overwhelmed when it came to like talking in meetings. It's like, oh, I'm the youngest person on the team, but I've learned to just like own it. And
Yeah.
the response now that I get when people like my boss mentioned it to me a couple weeks ago in our one-on-one. He's like, I've really seen your confidence like skyrocket, and like you can handle now meetings, and he's like, you take a lot more direction. He's like, that really he's like, don't think that doesn't go unnoticed. And I think especially corporate or like whatever field you're in, you just need to like get to that point and then you can slowly start climbing it. But it's hard. Like when you first start and
It's uncomfortable.
you're uncomfortable. Like what do you mean I'm leading this meeting? Like you guys are all 45 plus and you have kids and I'm 24. Like I understand where it can be
Yeah.
super uncomfortable, and I think that they're like having a mentor and having someone to guide you can be like an easy way to, I don't know, accelerate that.
Okay, obviously you are in a very similar position to us, actually. You have a full-time job
Mm-hmm.
similar to us, but you're starting this side hustle on the side. And it can be really scary and confusing when you have this basically passion project that you feel so passionately and highly about, and you really see something excelling there, but maybe the money isn't there, so you have to keep your full-time job, or the stability isn't there, so you have to keep your full-time job. How have you made the transition from your full-time job, being able to delegate time, split time into working with Milkshake?
Well, I don't think that the time spent on my full-time job has gone down. It just means that my free time has now just moved over to Milkshake. So where I would have, I don't know, hung out, like done more stuff with friends or whatnot, or like just watching shows, I'm now focused on this. So that's how the time has kind of divided. No free time to just Milkshake and my day job. But yeah.
I guess for the people that obviously don't know, do you want to explain Milkshake,
Yep.
what it is, and yeah, just give us like a little summary?
So Milkshake is a female F1 media brand, and we are creating content that female F1 fans like want to know about around news, fashion, and gossip. And I started it because there just really isn't like one place to do that. Like if you're an F1 fan today, you're getting news from like 100 sources and kind of piecing it together. And there's nothing that's in like a fun editorial and like more polished
Female
way.
gaze sort of way.
And
Yeah.
also, like the content is not technical at all. And like most female F1 fans, if you want technical content, there's tons of places for that. But we want to talk about like people and like, what's going on in like that world. So that's what
Okay.
it is.
And where did the idea come from? Like obviously you're a fan, and you've mentioned before like your family's really into it and you growing up around that scene, but where did Milkshakes like spark? Like what was the aha moment of like, okay, you know what? Like I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Like let's just go all in.
My husband, he like, I would just like say, hey, did you hear about like, who Lando's new girlfriend is, or who like Charles broke up with his girlfriend and now he's dating this girl. And he's like, where are you finding all this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, I just am. And he's like, there's not like one place that you go. And I was like, no. And he was like, that should exist because there's millions of girls that like look for this stuff. But then it took me like, I actually like sat on it for about 2 years and like really thought about it. Yeah, like it was just an idea.
But were you not worried that in 2 years, like it was gonna get picked up from someone else? Like, was that not, that would have been like my worry to like have a really, really, really good idea. And then, okay, I understand like sitting on it for a couple months, like half a year.
Issue when you work in a corporate role for a long time, like the time that it takes you to pick up and want to do something different.
Of course, the turnover is not like that.
I've actually noticed that. It's funny that you mentioned turnover and like the pace that people work.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed that between not necessarily me and you, but when we have dealt with other people or other friends that work in a corporate role, even when it comes to just like working hours, it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
And the mindset towards delegated work hours versus not work hours is very different. For myself, I know that, yes, I can work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, which I do, but I also will work on a Saturday and a Sunday, or I'll, maybe take that 3 p.m. Pilates class and I'll work at 7 p.m. instead.
Right.
And I have noticed that there is a very large divide with the people that work in everyday corporate because they will not do that. And there is really like a fine line that, no, I work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Do not bother me Saturday or Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see you Monday at 9 a.m. And I think it's really interesting that
I like that.
I know, and I have noticed that even for myself, like if I think of something, I'm just going to do it. It doesn't matter what day it is or what time it is. I'm just going to do it. And I think that also comes with liking my job and just liking what I'm doing. But then we'll talk about something and it'll be like a Saturday at 7 p.m. And I'm like, oh, do you want to send that email? And Dom's like, I'll send it Monday at 9 a.m. And I'm like, Dom, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
I think it's just culture though. Like it's just like corporate culture, which like you understand. But even just like at work, like my boss will say like it's 4. He's like, oh, you're almost done though, right? And I'm like, yeah, like I am done. Like, and I try and be like 9 to 5, or I'll do like an 8 to 4. But everyone on my team is very structured. Like there's a couple people that like have a hard stop because they have the kids and they have to like pick things up. But obviously like you'll work after, and like I'm on Google's like Google Chat, so like I have it all the time, but I'm like hard stop at 5. Like, and obviously if something is like an immediate deadline, like it needs to get done, like I'll do it. But like I work 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, and like that's it. Okay, but one thing that I'm dying to know, where did Milkshake, the name, come from? Like it makes sense when I hear the tagline and I hear the slogan, but like how did you go from motorsports to Formula 1 to racing, and then you got Milkshake, like a dessert?
So I didn't want a name that was like to focus on F1, because I wanted, our vision is for Milkshake to kind of span across all motorsports. And I was literally listening to the Milkshake song by Khalees.
Okay.
And I was like, wait, this song is about, and I looked it up after actually on, and it said that like she wrote the song about a milkshake brings the boys to the yard, what makes a girl special. And like that's what Milkshake is. Like we're creating content for women because we are special. So that's how I picked it. That's it.
And then the tagline is, what is it? The sweet take.
The sweeter take.
The sweeter take. Like I think that I honestly think that's so smart. Because like I didn't know that F1 was so female, like not female dominated, but the audience is so pulled by women, and like the sweeter, like it just makes sense.
Yeah, F1 says that 40% of their fan base are women now, which is not what it used to be when my dad was watching.
I mean, even when I started with you, because I help you with Milkshake and everything, F1 was not in my wheelhouse at all. And I had never thought about it. I think as F1 culture sort of shifts with Drive to Survive, the female fan base goes hard.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, like people, so the difference with F1 and other sports like hockey, football, soccer, like there's hundreds of athletes in those leagues. Like in the NHL or in the NFL, there's hundreds of football, like professional football players. In F1, there's only 20 people. There's only 20 drivers. So it's like crazy competitive. And so
Like the
because
best of the very best.
in the world, there's only spots
Yeah.
for 20 drivers. So then because it's so competitive, people are like scheming and backstabbing and networking to try and get in. So that's like brings in that element of like,
Like
the reality
suspense and
show.
just, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're obviously very passionate about Milkshake and like the community that you want to build. Where do you see it in the next 5 years? And then also tying into like your 9 to 5 and the job security that you have of it. Like, how are you balancing? Obviously, you do both right now,
Yeah.
but
It's like finances.
is the plan to obviously do Milkshake full time and let go of your 9 to 5, or do you want to find a way to have both of them kind of parallel in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer the second part first. So I like right now Milkshake is like a passion project,
Yeah.
right? And I think like if it turns the corner to be like a business, then yes, like I find a lot of fulfillment in doing this, and I like making people laugh and helping people learn about F1 and get into it and like, understand the personalities in it. And so I'm super passionate about that, and I would love for it to take off. But I think that I'm also like realistic, and if it doesn't, then then there's like the security, like you said,
Of your 9 to 5,
Yeah.
like your full time.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think it's tough because like you're obviously very successful in the current role that you have now, but you're almost like, I want to dip my toes in the water, and like obviously you want to go full-fledged with
Yeah.
Milkshake, and like ideally would be you said it was to be bought by another media publication.
By Liberty Media, who
Okay.
owns F1. But yeah, like the goal of Milkshake, like I'd love to be like a media company, right?
Yeah.
And we are like in the future have like Milkshake journalists at the races, like interviewing drivers and like asking different types of questions that are far more personable and becoming like the hype beast of
Yeah.
F1, essentially.
And I think it's from like what I've heard from Elise when she first like introduced me to Milkshake, and just hearing you talk about it, like it's definitely attainable. But what do you think will be like that turning point where like, okay, this is something like fun and you're really big on Instagram, to like that scaling moment where you're like, okay, like this is like the turning point where you think like you'll kind of expand to a larger audience?
Well, I think right now we are launching apparel, which is very exciting. Like we need to get revenue up and going. But I think the turning point for me on if I'm going to like do it full time is like, yes, the revenue, but then like raising money, getting investment, and that becoming like a real business, and we're scaling across multiple revenue streams, and then I'm like running a company, then that's when I would do it. But you can get a ton of fulfillment in a corporate role, right? Like if you keep moving up, you start leading bigger teams, you get to inspire more people, you get to help more people grow their career. Like if that's your jam, that's amazing. I think everyone should focus on like what makes them happy and fulfilled, and there's no right or wrong answer. For me, like I think I was lacking this creative outlet, and so that's been really fun for me. And then like taking a step and like, is this possible? Can I start a media company? And so that's kind of like this turning point. If it's going to work, I'm going to go all in.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. Thank you, Natasha, for coming on. Where can people find you?
They can find us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Sip Milkshake. And then we just launched our podcast, and that's on Spotify and Apple.
Okay, amazing. Well, I just want to say big thank you from the both of us. We talked about obviously all things Milkshake, difference between corporate, creative, why it's important to have a mentor, and kind of being an entry-level female in that space, everything that you should know. So a huge thank you. A lot of the things that you talked about like obviously really resonate with me, being a female in kind of the startup space. So yeah, thank you so much from the both of us, and we'll talk soon.